Hello and welcome back to Fuse Coding with me. I'm edA-qa mort-ora-y and I am one of the lead programmers on animation and layout and I guess expressions now, because expressions are what we'll be showing you today. We'll be doing a lot of the new features today, or not a lot of them, we're doing a lot with the new features I should say. This is the 1.6 that went out and we'll take a look at some of them and tell you how you might want to use them and how they work in animation. But we're going to start with the data model first. As always, if you have questions, just feel free to ask. If you don't catch me on the show, don't hesitate to come by the Slack channel, post in the forums, or ask me a question over on Twitter, and we'll get back to you. We should figure them out for you. A lot of the stuff we're doing now is beta. The model, but the other features should be new, and they should all be stable enough for you. As usual, I will be using a slightly different version than released. I'm not going to use any unreleased features, or I don't intend to, but there may be a few stability problems. That's kind of why we do them, to see how this works live. It helps with the show if I use the most recent stuff to see what's going to happen. Okay, so let's check the release docs so we can see what kind of things are new. As you can see, this is the big one here. The new JavaScript model is finally available. It's in beta. Hi, Otis. Let's see what this means first, this model. I'll walk you through what this model means, and I'm not going to use too much of it today. You've seen it a lot in the other shows. I've already been using this for a lot, but this is like finally here. You can finally use it. It's still technically beta, but most of it is not likely to change that much. The first thing you have to do is go over into your JS file, or your project file, and you guys start at JS, Fuse.js. This actually implements one of the hidden features, or not hidden features, but a new feature as well, besides the model, is this will actually use the transpiler, so we can actually write now in ES6, even though it's not supported on all devices. I think we're using Babel on the back end to transpile this to reduce JavaScript. On some of the projects we're using TypeScript as well, but I'm not going to set that up today. I'm just going to use the basic one. And then we have to create a file, export default class equal, or app. Let's just call it app state. Save this, appstate.js. And these can have a constructor. These are called when constructed. They will support parameters afterwards, but not quite yet in this version. And we'll do a very basic one. This one is Fuse Coding, the name of the show. We'll do very basic. This is one property. And then over in the main view, well, ignore the code I've had here so far. Let me just comment that out. We can pretend that's not there for now. Value equals title and alignment to center. Make this nice and big so everybody can see it. I can save this. Now I haven't played a lot in preview yet whether this all automatically reloads. Yeah, it's because I changed the project file. This is one of the cases where you most likely have to rebuild. And it's because the project file changes are very infrequent. And it's possible I should have tried refresh first. And I'm quite used to the one changing the project file rebuilding anyways. Okay, and nothing shows up, and I should have done this first, is because we have this app state, but nothing's created yet, and that's where we go into app and say model equals app state. And see what it says now. Title is not found, so now I have to figure out why it's not working. This .title should be enough. We have an app state, a constructor, and we say this .title. The only thing I can think is we somehow have to rebuild. There we go. So we had to refresh explicit, and that's quite possible. When you modify this model itself, this line, you might have to refresh. Again, this part is actually very uncommon, setting up this model. From here we can do live reloads and everything. So now you see we have the title Fuse Coding. And we have a binding to title. You're used to bindings, but the question now is, where is this binding coming from? Where is this title? And that's within this app state. In this app state, we've bound the system via this app model equals app state. It's loaded this class, it's created, it's constructed it, and we've created this object called this .title, and we said fuse.coding. And this is the basic binding. This is the basic idea of models. We have a change detection, and we can do basic things. Let me show one more aspect of this. I'm going to put this at the top first. Top center, and we'll make it a bit smaller. And we'll put something right in the middle. We're going to call a function called increment. We're going to put that on the panels on the model as well. And we're going to say value equals count. And we have to give this some color, so we have somewhere to click. And width and height equals 500. I'm going to make this a bit bigger too. I always make this a bit bigger because it's a bit hard to see on the stream. Okay, so increments not found. So if we click this, it's going to cause a problem. So you click, nothing happens. Increments, and you notice the count isn't 0. This is important to know because there is no count yet, so it doesn't default to 0. It just says, look, I have no value. And so here we can say this.count equals 0. And you notice 0 shows up now. It's over here because we have that. But what about increment? Now we can declare the function called increment and say this.count plus plus. And, okay. I'll explain why that worked in a second. Now when you click increment, it clicks up. And the reason it started from 6 has to do with the async model. And I don't know if I'm going to have to probably report that it queues them up. Is what happens is because we have an async model, we don't want to lose these events. And so we're assuming that this increment is there, and so it queues it up, and the backside says, well, increment wasn't there yet. I'll just wait for a reload, and when we reload it, it queues them up and sends them. In an app itself, that never happens. It's because of the refresh mechanism here that this is going to happen. And we can clear that up a little bit, but the idea is still there. You might see that sometimes. Alright, so you can click this and increment it, and this is creating the basics. This is a very basic model, and you'll notice this code. I've used a lot of this type of setup in the other episodes, and we'll come back to this tool a lot. But today I want to focus on something else in the release. And if we go down the release, you see there's a lot of stuff in here, but there's something called let. And there's something called let float. Now, these are a little bit sort of cryptic in terms of, well, what does this do? I mean, an experimental feature that allows creating expression aliases and local variables in UX. Great. Now, what does that mean, actually? Now, you may recall in a previous show, we had the issue that we wanted to do a little expression, and we wanted to use it in multiple places. And say, for example, we want to take this increment here, and we want to make it from a value from 0 to 100, kind of like a slider. You want to click on it. And we want to put a little dot at the bottom of the screen. So we're going to say circle width equals 50, height equals 50, or actually, yeah. And we're going to make this move across the screen. And I want to say the x equals, well, I'm not sure yet, but the y is going to be, actually, we can just do this. Alignment equals bottom left, and then leave the y alone. And then we can set the y. And what should the x be? Well, if we say increment, where's that going to put it? Let's see what happens here. It binds to the same value, and it's not liking that, probably because I have a, oh, not increment, count. Ooh, I don't know what it's attempting to do there then. Alright, so as we increment this, it's going to move across the screen. But now we said, let's make this increment, let's increment it by 5. And let's say there's a max count as well. Max count equals 100. If this.count, I'm doing Rust lately, I forgot the brackets, this.count is greater than or equal this.max count, this.count minus equals this.max count. We're just going to wrap it around each time. Now we're going to say, well, I don't want it at count. I want it at divided by max count times 100%. So now as I increment it, it steps across. And note it goes out of the screen here for a second. We'll fix that right away. And then it comes back to the beginning. That fixing it again is because of the default that these are aligned based on the alignment, and this is where you always want the anchor. We're going to say 50% and 0%. Let's put it at the bottom there of the screen. And okay, I'm going to move this up a bit too. I'm going to say actually y equals 60% or something. Take off the alignment. Now it puts it up there. It's at 25. And now when it moves across, you'll hit the end and it'll come back. And it goes in and out. And so we have this basic expression here. Now we say, well, you know, this is good and all, but I want to put some other label on this. I want to put a label just below it, but for various reasons I'm on a different layer and I can't create a single panel, or the panel is making me a mess. For whatever reason, I want to have this basic same expression, but I want to put something below it. So we're going to do this, and oops, where did that symbol come from? Even though I had that on the keyboard. So we're going to put a label underneath it instead. We're not giving it a width and height. We're just going to leave the default text color. We'll give it a font size of 20 again. And we want to put in the XY again, and we want to put that here. And what do we want the value to be? Well, we don't know what the value is going to be yet. Let's just say it's a count as well. Let's just to make this interesting. And I must have done something wrong. Oh yeah. And value is going to have to be equals count. Because this is a string, it binds slightly differently. The default is to bind as a count. And I'm wondering where my text is, though. Font size of 20. Where did it go? Where's my font? Ah, because it's underneath this thing. Duh, yeah. First off, let's put it on top. That should make it show up. And let's put it actually further down. For some reason we want it further down on the screen. And this is probably the reason why we want it in a different position. So now we have two items at the same location. Well, kind of. The y, x is different, the y is different. Now you could do this in a panel to simplify this and do it, but sometimes it's just easier to have the same value, have two items that are related to each other in the same place. Now what if we want to do this instead? We want to say, okay, well this is getting kind of annoying. We have this relative count. What else could we do with this? Well, this is where let comes in. We say let ux name equals relative position, relative count, and its value will equal count divided by max count. Now this seems very basic, but it helps a lot because now I can type rel count here, get rid of this, and I can reuse this expression. And it said I had problems. Ah, that's just temporary. Okay. And so now I have the same rel count there. So this is really, you know, this is a very basic use of rel count. We have a relative count, and you can start using this all over the place. We have 100% here, and 100% there, and we have this top and bottom y at 70%. Now let's add something a little more interesting where we can use this. Instead of saying 100% here, why don't we say plus 0.1 . No, I want to range, I want to say 0.8. So we're going to adjust the range. And then say times 100%. So we're going to take part of the range and add it to the left. And so they are in slightly different locations now. So it's offset. And so the circle is going a bit more. Actually, I wanted to put this on the text, not the circle. But that's okay. We can put it on the circle here. Let's just give this whole thing a bit of padding. Or here, so they have padding, so they have the whole area outside of it. And again, I could have done this before, but it's just more fun here. Actually, no, I don't want it. Let's just do that. Let's say... Yeah, we'll do it right here. We'll do panel. Padding equals 20 on the sides, or 25 to fill the full circle. And I'll just do a color on it just so you can see where it is, not because I really want to color. And I'm going to put this at y equals, we've said 60%, and height equals, let's say, 20%. And now we can change these y's. We want the y here at 0 and the y here at 100%. We're going to change the alignment. And we still have... Oops, and I messed something up with the alignment. Okay, but you can see the items in there. Or maybe this is what we want. Let's just pretend this is what we want right now. Say we have some text in here. And now let's use this value again to show how we can start combining things. And the purpose of let is so we can actually combine these things a little bit together. And we want to add something even more fun here. Now I want to take this and add a curve. And actually, I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to change this to 10% and put the text right on top of it. And you can really see what we'll do now is we're going to put a curve on here. Curve point, and we want a stroke width of 3 and a stroke color of, let's say, I don't know, let's just take the color of the circle for now, 080, so it's nice and clear. And now we say, well, where is x? Well, curve point, they have relative x values. Well, let's say, well, we have this top one here, and we have this one here. So like, oh, well, these have different values. So let's put another let here. Top position value equals, and we're going to take this one where the text is. It's on the top. And we're just going to say rel count, because it's the same thing. It's a relative top position. And let ux name equals bottom position. And this is rel count times 0.8 plus 0.1. And to the purpose of let here is just to make these reduced expressions that we can reuse them. And the purpose of reuse is not an efficient thing or anything, it's just for simplicity of reading the code. So now we say top position. And you can simplify this to bottom position. And this is really great when you want to reuse the values in multiple places, or you have the same value, or you have the same logical value shared. Now for the curve point x, we can also say, well, let's stick this in the top position. Where is it at the top? And its y is at 0. And I'm going to put the tangent here as equal to 0, 1. And this is going to force the direction of it. And it's going to be type equals smooth. And curve point 2, we're going to put x equals bottom position. Y equals 1. This is at the bottom. And we'll have the same tangent. And I want these smooth tangents in a very specific... Uh-oh, where's that? And I'll just fix whatever problems I have. Log style. Alright. Now you can say I reused them, and now you have a line going from the text to the circle. Now, I'm not entirely certain why you'd want to do this, but if you're doing like a timeline with highlights, this is something you may want to do. You may want to reuse this space. And this is very clear, showing that a basic panel, just combine these two, wouldn't do it. You really need to have these relative positions. You want to know where they are. And so this gives you some very basic options, and you can see our curve combines it. We may want to do this a bit more. Let's exaggerate it a bit more so you can see the effect even more. We're going to only take up even less of the position. And see what happens. So now you see it's even more exaggerated. So now you have this line, and these are a great way to do pointers, so you can actually stick pointers on there. And the tangent means that the line is going straight up and down at both ends. That's what I put the tangent as, because otherwise a smooth tangent will do something slightly different. Because I only have 2 points, then I'm drawing a straight line. But I actually want this curved effect, like look, I'm actually connected to here, and let's combine this. And maybe at the top here, we actually want to put a little box around this instead. So we're going to take this, put it up here, so we have a box, put the text inside of it. It doesn't need an alignment equals center, just, well, it'll shrink to that size anyways. And actually I'm going to make this thing a rectangle. We'll make a stroke width of 2. Stroke color, we'll use the same color again, and we should actually fix these colors as well. And we should have a padding so the text isn't right in there, 5,2, and let's see what happens now. So now we actually have this line, we have it connected with a little box, and we can still see these two elements are connected. And we're using let to do the common things. Now, this common color, these are resource colors, and we should be doing them as resources as well. So we're going to have a float for UX key equals, actually this can be UX global as well. Key or global, depends how we want to do this. We're going to say color line. #080. These prefixes to UX, if you haven't seen them much, for the most part you can just understand when doing certain things you have to use them. The difference between them and normal properties is that this thing here isn't creating a normal instance. These are like meta properties defining how this is working, how this is working in the processor itself, in the UX processor. Okay, so now we have the stroke color. We can put color line everywhere. Color line. Color line. And where's our color line? Color line. Everything should stay the same. We shouldn't have seen any difference. And you notice when we modify this high-level code here, because we haven't touched the model keeps the same state, which means we can work on the UI without having to continue to refresh and get it in the same state. So this is a very basic setup for let. We've managed to do a few lets. We have a couple lets. I'm overdoing it. You really only need to use it if you have like a complicated expression, and they do come up, or anytime you want to share. The moment you have to share the value twice, it makes sense to do the common expression, just because it'll be unshared. And if it's a really complex expression, there is a slight efficiency gain, but it would have to be really complex before you'd actually notice it. Okay, so far we've done that. We've created a simple model, and we've created a let. And so now we have this little curve, and we use the little curve, and this is how you can create like organic sort of APIs or UIs, that you have this curve connected, and you have the box at the top. I don't know what this middle is. Like I say, you might be using this for a timeline or something. I don't know. You could have different values connected top and bottom, and this is a good way to connect them. You have curves are an often useful way to do that. But now you're saying, well, this is a show about animation, and we love doing animation. So how can we fix this animation? And we want like a relative thing. We want this relative stuff all to be animated, because we don't like these hard jumps. Nobody likes hard jumps, and the only reason we have hard jumps is because it's often too hard to do animation, but we can simplify this a lot. And this is another case where rel count is really going to be helpful here. If you recall, we had something called an attractor config. And units equal normalized, and easing equals, no, let's say type equals elastic. We'll just type whatever the elastic one is, and we'll see what this comes as a default. And UX name is going to be equal to aconf or whatever. This is our Attractor Config. Now we have all these things based on relative count, and relative count comes from a model. Well, what if instead of the model, we put an attract on here? Well, assuming we don't have errors. Alright, so this should actually be a UX global. You could put a name, but then you have to add an extra property. Unit. Units, probably. Alright. And this is just reporting temporary stuff. So now when we increment, and you can implement all you want, now everything that's chained to relcont, everything has the exact same attractor value. These are all completely tied to each other. This is another very strong advantage of let, and one of the reasons I originally came up with it to use it is because if you copy this expression in different places, you don't have the same guarantee that you're using the same value. But using this let here, you're guaranteed whatever attract is spitting out, all of this down here is dependent on that one attractor value. So now you have these little animations. And we're using spring. I don't know if spring is the best way to do it, like elastic. Instead, you might want to do easing equals cubic in out. That moves quite fast, but it still has animation. Depends on how much you're moving it. It's still a lot more satisfying than no animation whatsoever. You have to decide for yourself what the importance of the flare is here. I mean, there's enough to draw the attention of the user to this spot here. Generally, one of the reasons you use animation is so you don't see hard shifts, and these ones aren't so hard, and also to draw their attention to it. In here, we've already got their attention. We clearly have this very big marker, and yeah, and we have this clearly big marker, so we can do, I don't know, we can do a lot of things with it. We don't have to do more animation. Okay. Now, let's put this bar in the middle. Let's make the panel a little smaller. Height equals 5%, or height equals, let's just give it a fixed height now, 20. So now it's a bit squished together. And I'm going to refresh it because I think it redid something wrong. Give it a chance to refresh. Okay, this text is a bit squished together, which is a little bit weird. Something I don't think. Let's restart the viewport. Something calculated the wrong position. It's one of the limitations of doing everything live. You can sometimes, we don't work on, okay, but still the text is in a weird position, and I'm wondering about that. Let's just increase the padding. Well, that's weird. Okay, I know what it is. This is a very big danger of when you have things laying outside of the panel they're in. They can't be bigger than the stuff outside. So for now, we're just going to put height equals 30, and that'll fix it. So if you don't understand, it's basically this rectangle was trying to be taller than the panel it's in, and by default that's turned off. And you can actually turn that off by changing the height, or changing the max height, or using a different box sizing. But for now, let's make the height outside a bit bigger. And I'm going to give this one a name, or no, not this one. I want to set the text inside. We have more text we can stick inside here. Right now, there's nothing inside here. And so let's put some text inside here, and we'll put it inside a while true. And we'll call it reveal. And in this reveal, we're going to stick a bunch of text in here. We'll stick an image. Let's stick an image in here instead. We'll pretend there's an image URL equals, and where was that wonderful site again that we used last time? Pixel I think it was. Oh, what was it called again? Was that it? No, what's wrong with my internet connection now? Come on. So Lorem Pixel is not helping us. I just got a search result, so I assume I'm there. And now why am I... Okay, so much for using an image. Oh. That's unfortunate. Let me just stick a different rectangle in there instead. So let's just stick a rectangle in here. And we'll give it a slightly different color so we can see it. Pick some of that photos it was. Pick some that there is. Thank you. Hey, that's a different one. I actually found a different one the other day. The other one actually does stuff too. And so I'm just going to take this in here. Policy equals unload unused. And this might end up getting quite big, 200 by 300, so I'm going to choose 300 by 200 instead. We're just going to see what happens. It's going to stretch out, but nothing turns on this reveal. So what we can do here is on this curve, we can have it toggle the value of it, and I think that should work. Not in the curve, on the circle. Clicked, and I think it reveals toggle. If not, we'll do it a different way. Okay. All right. So it toggles it on and off, and it's really small here, right? It's really, and it's because it's expanding to the area that it has. So this is kind of like, okay, fine, that's the photo of it there. And then we also want to say, well, let's change, what is this type here? We're going to change the name. UX name equals the panel. I don't know. Let's just call it the panel. Change the panel.height equals, let's give it a bigger height now, 200. Give it a bit of a duration, 0.3. We can animate that, and there's some padding now. Let's see what happens. Okay, so now it expands, and you can still go across. I want a bit of a border there, though. I want a bit of padding to make it more interesting. So you have a bit of a border around it. I don't know why it's black and white. Did I just happen to get a black and white photo? Did I get unlucky? Well, that's no fun. This may or may not make a big difference, so... And actually, this is fun. We can actually do something like this. We're going to do ID equals count. Now, sticking values into URLs directly in the UX is probably not a wise thing. It's just a nice way to test, because we don't know if it's escaped correctly or not, or at all. So it's probably not entirely safe, but... it's always going to be, okay, we have to do something that changes it. It doesn't like ID. How do we give it a different one? Random. I don't want G, I want image equals 0. Let's say image equals. Let's see if that actually works. I think this is supposed to be slash at the end as well, so I might have got that wrong. What do we have here? Alright. So now each one of these produces a different photo for us. It takes a while to load. An ID? Yeah, that's an ID. Yeah. Yeah, this is an ID. That's the whole point of it. And count is an ID as well. It's an integer, so we can do this and get a different value each time. And it's all loaded them. So when we go back to the beginning, it's going to load them all. And we still have this value going on for us. And if we click this, it goes away again. And we have that padding at the top, which is kind of making this flip around. Which is a little bit weird that it goes up and down. Okay, we have to make it go outside a little bit more. To make the default a little bit bigger due to the padding. Alright, and so you have the padding. These lines are inside the padding now, which may or may not be desired. And it's probably not desired, so I'm going to remove the padding again. Put this back to 30. And we'll put the padding down here in this other part here. panel padding equals 5. And that way we don't affect the sizing of the rest of it with just the image we have the padding on. And we'll make it 10 this side instead because it's more fun that way, just so we can exaggerate so we see it clearer. And so now we have an image there, and our line still adapts. You notice the line adapts. And now you're thinking, well, you know, I don't really want a linear one there. Maybe I want an attraction. Maybe I want something more. You can use let for this as well. Say you don't want to control everything from this while true. This can be a bit of a challenge. You don't want to control everything. Like maybe you have things that respond. You're like, well, I don't want to change the channel height this way. I just want to have something that tells me it. So this is where something like let float comes in. These are similar to let, except actually this is let bool. Sorry, because I'm going to do a bool here. Is refuel and value equals false. Let me check first that that compiles. Okay. Now, instead of doing this change panel height here, what we may want to do is we want to say change is reveal.value equal to true. I'm going to change this immediately. I'm going to get rid of this, and then up here in the height, put this on a new line. You can use this value as well then. So we're going to say, well, is reveal 200, otherwise 300. And now you notice it's instantaneous, that it goes up and down. We have no more animation. And this, sometimes you want this. Sometimes you want this, and sometimes you don't. Now, there's a couple ways you could approach this. You could now put a layout animation in here. And this is probably the cleaner way if you want to go. You want to do a layout animation. Resize vector equals 1 relative to size change. I think that's what it was, yeah. Duration equals 0.3, and let's see what happens with that. Okay. And you notice the image disappears immediately, which you may or may not want. That's because we've disconnected them. And it's hard to say whether you really want to do this or not, and how you want to do this. So now you can have a separate one. You can have a separate while true here, while true, and bind this while true. Value equals is reveal. Stick the image in here. And you can do something really weird here now. You could throw nothing in here. Duration equals 0.3. Now this may seem a little bit weird, but I'm just showing a bunch of ways you can hang things together if the defaults don't work for you. And you notice that nothing, it changes something. And I meant to put this around here, sorry, the padding. Actually, I can just stick the margin on here instead. Margin equals 5, 10. Okay, so now I showed you another way to disconnect them, and which approach you want to take is up to you, and it really depends on what effect you're trying to achieve. I'm just showing, again, a bunch of options here, how you can combine things, how you can use let, and the difference between these things like let bool and let is this one can be modified. These ones have an expression value from over here, and these ones have a fixed value on its own. We could, for example, I'm trying to think of another way we'd actually use this. Well, let me take the example I had at the bottom here. Sometimes you have things that you don't really want to be in the model. You have animation effects that are outside of the model. You don't want them to hit the JavaScript. You don't want to have the back and forth. You have pure model things that react to events on the screen. Now these aren't that common, but they do come up, and I'm going to show you kind of an artificial one here. So I'm going to stick a panel in and get rid of this. Change this panel. Now I'm doing a terrible layout. I'm positioning everything manually, which is not a great way to do it, but it'll work for now. You probably want to use a grid for this and stuff. But I was trying to show how you can do layout this way, so I wanted to use the advanced layout first. Okay, so now we have that float. Panel, alignment, center, text, rotate. Okay, now where is it? It should come in here. There we go. Now it doesn't affect the stuff in the bottom, and it affects the top. Is what it is. This thing rotates as you click it. It's a simple button, and it's I'm going to put this rotation on the panel itself and give the panel some color so we can see it again a bit better. Whoa, what did I do wrong? What doesn't like now? Panel doesn't, oh, color, yeah. Comes to the color property. Alright, so the anchor width is not so good anymore. Let's just take that off and give it a bit padding instead. 20:10, and then let it auto size itself. And I'm actually going to get rid of the button text and just put some other text. Text value equals rotate. Because you don't really need buttons. They're more of like a native integration thing. You can just put colors text anywhere. Font size goes 20. And just make the panel clickable. Get rid of the button. Text needs an end tag. Okay. Now, the difference here is that you could do rotation like that before using the model, except what I did here is with let float, is you notice nothing here is in our model. We have this rot value for rotate. It's not inside our class. It's a pure UX level value. It's not part of our state. And this is also with these other values. This let bool is also not part of the state. These let expressions are derived from this state. And what let does is it completes a user story that we've had for quite a while, is that quite often in the UI, you just need to have a variable sitting around. You need something that you can play with and modify. And so this is where the case rotation here is that when we click this, we increment the value of rot by 1. And then we use that rotation to control the rotation. And so every time we click it, it rotates a little bit. And that's one of the ways to use let float. This isn't an ideal way. There are other cases that comes up, but this is the one I can think of off the top of my head. I use this a lot. The original place where let comes from is in another feature which is going to come out in the next release. Is I had a whole bunch of line drawing and I needed a bunch of let type stuff, and so I added it to there to simplify it, and that simplifies a lot of things. In this case here, I hope you can see that this gives you a lot of power on how you combine things. And I just showed a few layout options here, some various things of how to load it up and down. Now if you notice that let's address one more thing since we're on it. You notice when we have a new image, it's blank for a while. And that's not so much fun. So let's change this. We're going to put on here, we're going to have a panel here again. Where do we put the panel for the image? So now I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to put a panel with a margin of 10. Take the policy off. I'm going to stick a while loading in here. Or color equals just something light so we can see it. Now if I did this right, alright, you can momentarily see it. And we might want to instead put the actual rectangle here the whole time. And just make it invisible. So normally it's just invisible, and while it's loading we can change border. And that was actually pretty bright, so let's just do this way. Uh-oh, I got the color wrong. No, I think it's just the reload. It has to reload. Whoops, go away. Now what did I do? What did I do wrong? Let me do a restart first, in case they broke on me. Oh, the while loading is not working correctly when I have it. The while loading appears to be in a stuck position now. It was working before. So what's the problem now? I'll just stick the while loading in the image, or... No, why is this not working? It was working and then it broke. Oh, that's why. Silly me. Stroke color has to be changed. I'm changing the wrong color. Okay, so now it's not loading. So when we do actually load, if it actually gets another image, well, we can force it to get all new images just by putting a 1 in front of the count. And you can see the border, and it's just a little bit more appealing when there's nothing there, that you can see something happening. And that one just didn't load. Uh-oh. We don't know for sure if the server has all those images. So that one it had. So it might have just been missing that one image. We got an error, a temporary error. That happens sometimes. So now we have a little bit of feedback. And we have that while loading. And this is another way, I'm just showing again more. This is getting to be a little bit too chaotic for a source file, that if somebody gave me this file, I'd be a little bit upset about the way it's organized. This should be organized quite a bit better than this. But this is really just a playground. I want to stuff all this thing in here. And you should really get in the habit of separating out. But again, I'm not going to separate out because a lot of the stuff in here let float. This is really just like, I showed an example of how to use it. It's not an ideal situation. The curves approach here, this is a good use of the curve here. You have a curve that adapts to where the position is, and you use the let for that to have the common value. The isReveal, by using a let bool, we show a way that we can make things reactive. Rather than having the change directly modify it, we can change a variable and then have everything based on reactive calculations instead. And that gives more options and more control from the UI without always having to update the model, because the purpose is the model, this thing in app state. This should really be your business logic. This should have nothing to do with the user interface. We want to keep this down to like, well, where is the business logic? Things like animation and stuff, let's try to avoid having it in here. And that's why we're putting it out here, is we really want this high view here to deal with just animation and keep the business logic in normal state where it is. And that's what things like let float and let bool and let does. That's what the whole feature of let does. And I hope that demonstration is useful enough. If I can think of a nicer example, I'll come up with it, but I wanted to show the basic features. And if you have any questions on how to just ask, if you can come up with a better example, then great. I always love to see things show it off in the forums for us, or let me know. And if you have a problem using some of the stuff, then also just ask in the forums. I think otherwise that's my show for now. If nobody has any other questions. And I thank you very much for watching. Go download the new release if you haven't done so yet. There's a lot of new features always coming in, a lot of nice things. This LED is one of the big features in this one. It looks like a tiny little feature, but it actually does quite a bit. Look at the release notes, some of the other things. Next Monday, maybe we'll go through a few more of the new features. There's a few different ones. And be sure to follow me on Twitter and on Twitch, and subscribe to me wherever as well. And before, vote for the videos wherever you see them, vote them up, retweet, or whatever. It really helps me out. And I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, that was my show.